Hey friendo, Steve here. Welcome back to the channel. Well, WrestleMania is right around the corner. I thought I'd do something a little bit different today and let you guys know what my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time are. I don't really talk about, historical stuff here on the channel, but given that WrestleMania is like the big wrestling thing every single year, I thought it'd be kind of fun to let you guys know what my personal favorite WrestleMania matches are. I kind of feel like it's a window into like what you're getting into when it comes to how my mind works here at WrestleJuice. So I thought, okay, it'd be kind of fun. And it's just easy content. I just wrote down all my favorite WrestleMania matches. I have a bunch of them here. We're going to go ahead and just dive into this. And none of this is in no particular order, except for the top one. I have one distinct favorite WrestleMania match. I personally think it's the best WrestleMania match of all time. But we'll go ahead and start off on a comedic note. And it's just from a couple years ago. It's Johnny Knoxville versus Sami Zayn. Before Sami Zayn was mixing up with the bloodline and becoming a contender, a serious guy that people could contend with, he was a bit of a goofball. He was a conspiracy theorist. He was a guy who had his Intercontinental Championship and he lost it. And then he hired a documentary crew to help him get respect or something like that. And along the way, he became enemies with Johnny Knoxville. Now, again, my criteria for what makes a great WrestleMania match to me might differ from you, because I don't really care about, the number of false finishes in a match or how long it goes or the historical context, although that does sort of play into it for me, but I just want to be entertained. I just want to sit there and be engrossed in what's going on in front of my television, or if I'm there live for 31, which I had a great time, or 33, in which I had a miserable time, and none of those matches are on my list. I just want to have fun or feel something in the match. And being a child of the 80s and having grown up in college on Jackass, on Johnny Knoxville and the guys, I thought that this match was so absolutely wonderful. Comedically speaking, it had everything you could possibly want, including, and I know I'm not supposed to praise this person's name, but Kevin Dunn actually had some really, really, really well done TV direction with a lot of the placement of the various props and whatnot. That giant hand sort of comes out of nowhere and slaps, I think it was Sami Zayn. I thought this match was so much fun. I had a blast all the way through it. And in the end, that's sort of what I look for in my wrestling matches, either with the drama or the comedy. Just move me in a certain way and I'll be pretty happy. So I'm going to throw that in there sort of at the bottom of the list. Next up, it's not even a real match. It's Firefly Funhouse. My mind was blown the other day when I was watching a clip from the Chris Van Vliet interview with John Cena from I think a couple months ago. Maybe it was more recent than that, where he said he wrote the Firefly Funhouse match. That was crazy. I had no idea that was the case until I saw this clip where John Cena was pitched the idea, him and Bray Wyatt trying to come up with like, okay, what can we do? We've got this whole warehouse of stuff. And he said, what if we do the Firefly Funhouse match? He was like, what is that? It could be anything you want it to be. Holy shit. Okay. And so they came up with this idea to do a meta commentary on John Cena's career. And John Cena wrote it himself. And would like send ideas to like the writers and Bray Wyatt, and they'd be like, yeah, let's do it. That to me makes it even more awesome than it already was. I thought this was the perfect cinematic match. There are really two cinematic matches during pandemic era that stood out to me as heads and tails above the rest. It was that one. It was the Money in the Bank going up the Titan Towers. I thought that was actually a stroke of genius and pretty inspired. But I thought this commentary on John Cena's career, understanding just how wrong they got it when he faced Bray Wyatt before and getting it right this time, really, really was impressive. And it was a bright spot amongst that empty arena. WrestleMania was not a very good one. Any opportunity to get away from inside the confines of the Performance Center, I was happy with. Moving on, actual match. Another one that a lot of people actually really, really enjoy for it being just a really good match. I'm talking about Kurt Angle versus Shawn Michaels. I was there live for 21. A really good WrestleMania, really solid WrestleMania, and this is probably the best match on the card. I have really vague memories of this WrestleMania. I don't know why. I wasn't drunk and I wasn't high. It was a long time ago. It was in 2005. And I have fond memories of that year, but I kind of barely remember this. I don't think we were in the second level. We certainly weren't on the floor. I think we're in like the upper first level. And I don't know, maybe I just wasn't into wrestling as much as I am now. I remember at the time being engrossed in this match, but then when I watch it back on TV, I'm like, holy shit. This match is absolutely amazing. I love this thing. I think it's great. And to this day, it really stands out. Angle versus HBK, terrific match. One of my favorites of all time. Next up, another really good match and another one that includes Shawn Michaels. And I'm talking about, of course, Triple H versus Shawn Michaels versus name redacted at WrestleMania 20. Look, back before Chris Benoit did what he did, I was a huge fan. I thought that it was, to me, a real testament to his ring work, because obviously the guy didn't really have like a regular personality. Even on screen, he just seemed like super intense guy, but he was really, really good in the ring. And he was like Wolverine. I mean, that's what they call him, right? The Rabbit Wolverine, and that was his nickname. Anyways, this match with Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Man, the idea that these two guys who have like all the sway in the company, who kind of probably do whatever they want in this match, conspired to put this guy up in the main event. And then afterwards, Eddie Guerrero and him celebrating. These are two guys in WCW that me and my friends, being originally WCW guys, were always like, these are the guys. These are the guys that you should be promoting up to the top. And WCW tried too little too late. They both go to WWF, and it was like, okay, let's see if they're going to actually give these guys like their proper due, their proper respect, an opportunity at the very least. And they gave that to Chris Benoit, and he reached the top. And to see both him and Eddie Guerrero and the confetti falling at the end was a special moment for the people like me who came to WWF because of WCW. I got into WCW and then hopped into WWF. And to see those guys successfully transition and go to the very top, it was awesome to see. Unfortunately, Chris Benoit's a monster, so I would never want him in the Hall of Fame. But for that moment, it was pretty cool. It is what it is. After that, I've got Rock versus Austin 3. This would be really high up on my list. I love the concept, and this is why No Country for Old Men is one of my favorite movies. I love the concept of two guys telling a story where time is essentially passed them by. The two biggest names of the biggest era of pro wrestling, and they're not even main eventing. And it's one of their last matches. For the other guy, it's his last match and for quite a while. The Rock basically was going Hollywood, and Stone Cold Steve Austin was going to go figure out what he was going to do because his body couldn't take it anymore. And so to watch these two put on an absolutely amazing match, and in the end, when Rock finally gets that win over Steve Austin at WrestleMania, and he sort of sits there and they're just talking to each other, you feel it. You feel like these guys just went out there and concluded an entire era. They concluded the Attitude Era, and it was an absolutely beautiful moment. I love that match. It's one of my favorites on this list. Next up, got to give it up to Ronda Rousey, Becky Lynch, and Charlotte Flair. There was absolutely something special about that WrestleMania 2019 when they main evented that show. They made it a big deal. The build itself was kind of wonky, but I loved that go-home segment, which was kind of madcap. The cops were trying to arrest them backstage, and they were still beating the crap out of each other. And they really delivered that match. The finish, because of that weird, awkward pin, that I forgave. I was like, you know what? It was messy. That's okay. That's going to happen. But the first time the women main evented, I thought that match absolutely killed it. I thought it rocked, and I thought it justified that match being there in the main event and Becky Lynch holding up both those titles. I thought that was a really, really special moment. I thought it was the last good decision that Vince McMahon pretty much ever made on a big sort of level. After that, we have another women's match, Sasha Banks versus Bianca Belair from WrestleMania a couple of years ago. It was 37, I think. Sasha and Bianca Belair main eventing. The emotion from Bianca Belair being where she was and how kind of quickly she ascended the ladder, but by doing it in a way that was basically undeniable, her superstar status just absolutely cemented because of this match, in my opinion. Sasha Banks seemingly being so happy to put Bianca Belair over. I remember, man, the whip of that braid against Sasha Banks, I gasped. I absolutely gasped. I love this match. I watched it several times back. Just an absolute masterwork of a wrestling match. I love it. It's one of my favorite WrestleMania matches of all time. I'd recommend it to anybody. After that, kind of the other end of the spectrum, got Sting versus Triple H, WrestleMania 31. Again, as a dude who in college, my first foray into wrestling, I'd see, that's the thing. You're not going to get a lot of like, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant on here. You're not going to get a lot of like Macho Man versus Ric Flair or any of that kind of stuff on here because I wasn't watching back then. I have no emotional connection to the first, I don't know, whatever, 13 years of WrestleMania, of WWF. I appreciate it now from a historical context, and there is a match on here from that era, but like there's no connection for me there. So a lot of those matches aren't going to be on here. That being said, the Monday Night War for me was everything when I was coming up. It really was a captivating battle between two companies who would be swapping people and talent and ratings every single week. It was really thrilling. And at a certain point, I loved both products. I was a huge WCW fan when I started hanging out with the friends group that I was hanging out with, including Larson and Hilton. And I was like, oh, NWO, Scott Hall, these people are cool. Hogan, he's a bad guy. That's really cool. I thought they had some really good storylines going. And then eventually I saw this Stone Cold Steve Austin guy. I was like, oh my God, who is this guy? This is really cool. So we started watching WWF. We'd watch both shows back to back. There was no tribalism amongst our friends. That didn't even occur to us at the time. It was like, this is really cool and this is really cool. And when these people suck, we're going to call it out. And when these people suck, we're going to call that out. That's how we rolled back then. And so to watch that rivalry play out live, I was there at 31, live, obviously they were telling the story of the Monday Night War. So of course, WWF had to win, Triple H had to win, but for Sting to have the NWO come down and have his back against the WWF, against DX, man, I thought that was really cool. I thought that was like the coolest thing. And I thought it was a really fun match. Unfortunately, it was not very long after that till Sting ended up getting injured and he hightailed it out of there. But at least we got his AEW run, which was fantastic. But for that moment, Triple H versus Sting, man, I thought that was a really cool match. I thought they did a really good job with that. And I wish that Sting's run in WWF, or WWE rather, would have been a lot better. But for that one match, I was thoroughly, absolutely 100% entertained, and it tickled the nostalgia bone like nothing else. And on top of that, I thought they did a good job with the match. It was an overbooked mess, which was kind of great. After that, I've got Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley. This just happened last year, and oh my God, it was one of my match of the year candidates. And according to Ronda Rousey, evidently the match is supposed to be much shorter, but Charlotte decided to just make it longer. And I love her for that because this match was fucking awesome. And it's funny because I've been thinking about it more and more. Now we've got Rhea Ripley versus another horsewoman coming up here with Becky Lynch. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, I know Charlotte Flair gets a lot of like hate from the internet because of how much she's been pushed in the past. But I'll be goddamn if she's not one of the best wrestlers in women's wrestling that we've had. She is an absolutely phenomenal talent who deserves all the respect and flowers. And that match with Rhea Ripley and her was absolutely fucking phenomenal last year. And I'll stand by that. Can't wait for her to come back and recover from that knee injury. Next up, again, this is the other end of that particular spectrum of like good matches. I've got Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior. Again, I didn't grow up on this shit, right? But later on in life, having watched plenty of historical matches, this one really grabbed me because it's interesting to see such a zeitgeist shift from one massive star, Hulk Hogan, to another massive star, the Ultimate Warrior. And they really, and just how representative of 2 decades, given that I am, again, a child of the 80s, how representative of their decades they were. The Ultimate Warrior, granted, it was 1990. He was sporting just the absolute most 1990s sort of aesthetic you could possibly have, with the highlighter marker colors, with the face paint, the hairsprayed hair, just how jack steroid to the gills that guy was. And then you got Hulk Hogan, this leathery byproduct of the 80s who, was still kind of popular at the time. It's rare that you have like a literal current passing of the torch. One big name directly to another big name. They talk about like Rock and Hogan being a passing of the torch, or Rock and Cena being a passing of the torch. Back then, it was, you're the current guy, and now this is going to be the next current guy. That's why Bret Hart was upset with Hulk Hogan, because it was supposed to be like, hey, you're that guy, and now I want to be that guy, and then he never did it. But to have two characters so both universally like loved by the crowd and not have one of them be a babyface and the other guy a heel. They're both good guys going into this. It's just like, which of these huge powers is going to come out on top? And then the match itself wasn't that bad. It was a pretty decent match. And the crowd was so electric. I appreciate that. It does come off like a historic, in wrestling anyways, like definitely some sort of historical marker of like, wow, that's actually kind of a cool moment right there. You don't get that a whole lot where two huge moneymakers come together. And then, of course, it all fell apart because Warrior couldn't keep his shit together. But in that one moment, it definitely seemed like a passing of the torch, but it kind of really wasn't. And then next up, I've got another Hulk Hogan match, this time Rock versus Hulk Hogan. Again, having, through my college years, been an NWO Hollywood guy, appreciating his work, appreciating that story, watching him come over to WWE and watch the crowd just freak out over the fact that it was Hulk Hogan and not the NWO, but it was like Hulk Hogan's back in our company, back in WWE at the time. It was a really, really electric thing to watch that crowd sort of, again, just like with the Hogan Warrior stuff, be sort of 50-50. Like, hey, we like both these guys. We just are recognizing this historical moment. That shit was special, and I think they got it right with Rock and Hogan versus Austin and Hogan. I think Rock Hogan, that's the way you go. And yeah, again, match was decent enough. Didn't have to be like a barn burner, but that crowd really elevated it to another level, and that's why it's on my list. And of course, I've also got the first WrestleMania main event that I ever saw, and that was Stone Cold Steve Austin versus the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. I know both guys think this match could have been better because HBK was just in dog shit shape in terms of his back hurting. He was on the verge of retiring, basically. He was gone for 4 years. Well, he showed up in this match, and man, you can feel every ounce of pain on this dude's body, and he still put in a really, really awesome performance. I'll never forget that finish. Trying for the super kick. Austin catches it, spins his ass around, and gives him a stunner. Oh, man, that was an awesome moment. And again, it felt like, oh, my God, this is at the beginning of a brand new era. This is really, really cool. And we got that with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then from then on, we would watch Raw first and then Nitro after that. That's how our viewing patterns changed because of that WrestleMania. The Austin McMahon rivalry was on, and we were there for it. So this definitely, basically based off pure nostalgia and that finish, that lands up here at the second spot. But the first spot, the one that's far and away above all these other matches, is the end of an era match, Triple H versus The Undertaker, with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels as a guest referee. My God, end of an era. I firmly believe this should have been the last match for all these guys. It should have been, HBK already has the last match, so it was his. But actually, it wasn't his because he did Saudi Arabia. But it should have been Undertaker's last match for sure, because this match was the story of these three guys and the 4-year-long story they had already told to get to this moment, and everything seemed lined up for Triple H to beat The Undertaker. And in that moment, HBK super kicks, gives sweet chin music to The Undertaker, which leads to the pedigree, and Undertaker still kicks out, even though both those guys, DX is like, oh my God, that really should have done it. It seems like HBK just did it to get this match over with because he couldn't take it anymore. It was too much. What a brilliant moment. What an absolutely brilliant match. This match is as close to cinema as WWE has been, in my opinion. Maybe this year things will change. I don't know. But end of an era, the number one match for me at WrestleMania. And there you go. I got it all done in about 20 minutes. Let me know what your guys' favorite Mania matches are in the comments below. And hopefully we'll see you guys on Saturday and Sunday. Of course, I'm going to be live streaming my reactions over there at the Going In Raw channels at youtube.com/Steven Larson or over at twitch.tv/Steven Larson. Twitch isn't a .com. Anyways, hey, do us a favor, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. I think she's around here somewhere. Oh, there she is over there. Oh, this little tail wag. She knows I'm talking about her. Oh, little grumpy goose over there on an Easter Sunday.